And we're recording. So Roxane, I wanted to thank you deeply for your time. And I'm going to introduce you. I feel like you require no introduction, but I get really excited about introducing everyone. So Roxane Gay is a New York Times bestselling author of Bad Feminist, Untamed State, Difficult Women, Hunger, a memoir, also an opinion writer for the New York Times and a Guggenheim Fellow, and also lead writer for the World of Wakanda, which I personally love because I grew up with comics. So I wanted to thank you for your body of work and thank you for sharing your mind in the way that you do. And as someone who grew up in French academics, I really appreciate a lot of the questions that you bring rather than the answers. And so when I thought about who to have a conversation about effort, I thought of you. I'm a former Olympian, and it has always been a struggle for me to find anyone who hates physical exertion in a way that I can relate to when you are talking about how uninterested in some cases you are with showing up to your cardio and your exercises. So that was initially why I reached out, and then just wanted to have a larger conversation about effort and what it meant. So we talked about a couple of different ways we could start, and I guess I can just, do you want to just start with like the etymology of effort and then move into a conversation about effort as something that is possibly gendered?
What Olympic sport did you play?
I was a swimmer.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I was a swimmer. I was a sprinter. I went to the 96 Olympics. I swam the 50 and the 100 freestyle. And I had very fraught relationship with swimming. I actually hated it and found it quite physically painful. And so I always kind of felt kind of perplexed as to why it was something that was so celebrated, and to the highest level, right? Like the Olympics, it's kind of like this moment, and the effort and sustained exertion, mental and physical, that these athletes have had to kind of put up with seems erased at the Olympics, and all we focus on is that particular moment. And yeah, that's what I did. What is your main form of exercise?
I hate exercise, and I have no relationship to it except that I do it. I do mostly biking. Yeah, I do mostly biking,
Yeah.
like incumbent bike, exercise bike type stuff. Sometimes treadmill and walking out in the, out of doors.
Mm.
I loathe it all. And then I do weight training with a trainer.
So, I mean, I know why I do it. So when I quit swimming, I stopped exercising for like 15 years. I was like, I've exercised for a lifetime, and go fuck yourselves, basically. That's how I felt about it. And then I fell in love and have been married with Siri, and she was the one who was like, you're 36 at the time, and you have to kind of take care of your body. And I just did not understand, for me, this journey of like exercise equaling care for the body versus exercise being kind of like this totally uncaring and masochistic, torturous activity that I did professionally. It took me a really long time, and I still do it. I don't feel like I have a particularly positive attitude about it, but that is what changed it for me. Siri loves exercising. It brings her joy. And I feel like I've gotten better, but it's still loathsome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just do it because I have to. I do it because I had weight loss surgery last year, and so I'm in the middle of, I'm not going to call it a weight loss journey because I'm not going anywhere. But just a weight loss project. And, the reality is I'm 45, and if you want to stay mobile and limber late into your life, it's really important to exercise. And
Right.
so I hate it. But a lot of people think that exercise is only for weight loss, but it's also just for fitness
Right.
and overall health. And so I just do it for those reasons, but it also contributes to weight loss. I spent a fortune on the surgery and I had to pay cash. And so I was just like, if I'm going to make this investment in myself, then I need to really make sure that I don't waste the investment.
Right.
Otherwise, I could have done something else with that, $25,000, $30,000. So I just do it because I have to. I don't take any pleasure from it. I never do. I never have, and I never will. And I'm so comfortable saying that. We always have this expectation, like, every day, just for accountability and to remind myself to do it, I post a picture after my workout on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so many times people send me messages saying, surely you're feeling the endorphins by now, or, exercise is so great or good for you. And I'm like, I'm not actually looking for affirmation in any way. I'm not looking for any kind of commentary. I'm just doing it.
Right.
It's what it is. It's like a neutral thing. And it's really interesting how much rhetoric there is around effort and exercise and how deeply invested people are in that rhetoric, where you're supposed to love it because it's good for you. Lots of things are good for you that are fucking terrible.
Right.
And, hey, like both things can be true. It's good for me and I hate it. And it's totally fine.
I tried to do like similarly to keep myself accountable, like a daily short 15-minute exercise. Because I'm like, okay, everyone's in quarantine. Nobody knows how to exercise. I happen to be a former professional athlete. Maybe this is one of the ways that I can be of service. And I would show up every day, and like, I don't wear often like workout clothes. I hate how they feel on my body. And so I just was like, started doing push-ups in my jeans and putting it on social media. And then I realized that I have to tread a fine line around making myself accountable, because I really dislike the physical experience of exercising. And I guess what I mean is, it's like, there is pain involved, and I'm in chronic pain for someone who's been a professional athlete. And then on top of that, to put effort onto it, physical strenuous exercise, I feel like often, one, for me as a former Olympian, people are like, come on, surely you didn't hate it that much. And I'm like, I really hated it and developed a really massive drug habit while I was swimming. Like, that is my Olympic story. I was like, I went to the Olympics and also the Olympics of drug using. Like, that was how I kind of cohabitated with that degree of physical effort. But I agree, similarly, that was why I started exercising, was just this notion of like, okay, so I didn't actually think I was going to live to be, I'm 42, and I have people that I love and who love me in my life today. And so I feel a sense of responsibility for kind of remaining and continuing to show up. But and I guess some people come to it in kind of like a oh yeah, of course, when you get older, things are a little bit more rickety. And so therefore you do some exercise. And I'm like, uh, so it's been horrible in many ways to accept that this is one of the responsibilities of A, still being alive, B, having people that I love and want to be around for and who love me. And so I think about it a lot, and I too still do it. And I guess one of the things that you're saying is that that is sufficient enough a reason to keep doing it, mm-hmm. despite the dislike, right? So, and I like that there's no journey, and I like this notion of fitness because it's unrelated to a physical appearance, but rather one's ability, right? So I just want to kind of pivot if we can. So I live in a feminist household, and so there are also a bunch of other things that I don't like doing that require effort. And what I found, how do I want to, one of the things that I wonder is the gendered nature of effort, right? So in French, when you have it, you know, tu fais un effort. So you're actually doing a masculine thing. You are doing a masculine effort. And I know because in my household, there is also effort in less celebratory things like cleaning, like cooking. And now we're a blended family where there are biological cisgendered men. There's my sister, there are like other women. There's a baby that we have to take care of. And the notion of effort seems to still land around kind of like these victorious moments rather than things that are require as much effort, but that are more caregiving, more, I mean, those are the things that I've been considering.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like maintaining a household takes effort, and you know, you're supposed to feel a sense of accomplishment, I think, after effort. That's like the narrative, like you put in some effort and there's a reward at the end. But with a lot of the things, whether it's exercise or cooking or cleaning the house or taking care of the baby, whatever, like there is no reward. It's just something that has to be done, and you have to exert effort and do it. And you know, I think that's why so many people dislike domesticity, because there is no material reward. There is no emotional reward, except that for some people there is. For some people, they do derive some deep emotional satisfaction from caretaking, from whatever. Like I cook and bake. I love it.
So do I.
And I get a lot of pleasure from it. And it's a lot of effort. Like yesterday was Passover and my partner is Jewish. So I made Passover dinner and it was a lot of fucking effort. Like making matzo balls from scratch and making the soup and yada, yada, yada. And I'm happy to do it, but it was effort. And I don't think we quantify it enough. I think people just think, oh, because you enjoy it, the effort is negligible. But sometimes the effort is significant and you enjoy it. And sometimes the effort is significant and you don't. And there just doesn't seem to be a lot of space in discourse around effort and the kinds of work that we do, both professionally and personally, where it's just ambiguous. And
why do you think that is? Because I'm actually quite perplexed by it.
Oh, it's capitalism. That's all. It's just like the nature of living in a capitalist society where everything has to have a value.
Mm. So is that, okay, so that makes sense, because what I was thinking when you were saying that was like in France, there seems to be a lot more of an ability to just ask questions for questions' sake without really understanding whether or not there's going to be some sort of answer to it. But those questions in themselves are of value. And so I do become kind of quite overwhelmed by this narrative that pushes back against my very real experience as an Olympian, which is I did this massive effort. I swam for 8 years. 3.5 of those years I spent actually submerged underwater, and I hated every second of it. There were moments of like suspension of disbelief where the physical experience of being underwater was gorgeous, but in those moments I was actually floating. There was no effort being sustained. I was being held by the water. And there seems to be in that narrative, even when I talk to kind of Olympians that I went to the Olympics with, kind of like some resistance around like I had to have enjoyed it in some way. And as an adult now, right, like 42, I'm like I'm willing to go exercise. I'm willing to be physical, but it is painful. And tolerating that pain and still doing it is something that is character building and useful, I guess. I just want to, let's see. Right. Etymology, the effort, s'efforcer. Do you want to talk very briefly around this notion of like the privilege of knowing effort and then not?
How do you mean?
Well, what I mean is that, so I've not only been thinking about physical effort, but I've been thinking about what it means to sustain an emotional effort for a long period of time, what it means intellectual effort, but mostly emotional and sustained effort, right? Like we're 4 weeks into quarantine over here in my household, and I've been thinking about not only physical effort, but the effort of focus, the effort of care, the effort of have all become very domestic in that we're in the home and participating with how these walls are literally working. And I guess what I mean by this question of pause is that I have found that when I was an athlete, sure, I understood what it meant to be practicing, and I understood what it meant to not. But because I was a swimmer during that whole time, there was no pause. So I experienced 8 years of sustained effort. And I only experienced relief once I quit. And then it didn't hit me until many years later. And then my body actually started to change, like and so I think, so I've been thinking about, and it was only then that I understood what it means to sustain an effort and then not. And I've been thinking about it in terms of what's happening now, right? Coronavirus has happened, and I work in restaurants. My entire industry has completely collapsed, and I have servers, bartenders, lifers who have suddenly become unemployed. Not like these people are rolling in the dough, right? So suddenly, also these people take care of their elders, their grandparents, their mothers. Like that was how the family was living, and now suddenly they're not, right? And in that was this sustained effort, but also the responsibilities of taking care of. And now it's like piled on top. So I wanted to unpack this notion of like there has to be, is this notion of like, is it, in order to know effort, do you have to know what it means to pause? Do you have to be able to understand what it means to relax?
Oh, no, not at all. I don't think so. Because there are plenty of people that have to work themselves to the bone without a lot of time for pause. And they're crystal clear on the fact that they're expending effort. I think the more money you have and the more class mobility and social privilege you have, the easier it is to be able to appreciate effort because of pause. But I think for people who don't get that privilege, I mean, if ask someone working in a grocery store right now, and they'll tell you they don't need a pause to understand how hard they're working. And I do think that the coronavirus has revealed exactly which efforts matter and which efforts don't, as we see what is essential and what isn't, and as we see, you know, who's having plenty of leisure time and like is bored versus who is panicking and going hungry,
Right.
And or working more than ever. You know, there's a lot going on around effort right now. In fact, my friend Tressie McMillan Cottom tweeted something interesting yesterday, and she said all of the working class Black women she's spoken to in recent weeks have said that they're nervous and worried about what's happening, but they're also grateful to be truly resting for the first time in their lives. And I think it's very telling that there is an entire group of people for whom this is the first rest, despite the conditions that brought it about. This is the first time they've been able to rest because they were forced to rest, because there's no other option. And that means that they never had a choice. They never got to opt out of effort. And that's unacceptable. Like, that's not the way we should be living, where people can only rest when a pandemic literally shuts the entire global economy down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's nothing good about this. There's nothing good that's going to come out of it. You know, you see a lot of nonsense online and a lot of people writing bullshit think pieces about, you know, like silver linings. Like, there's no fucking silver lining. Thousands of people are dying and people are going hungry and people are suffering, and we just don't even know when this is going to end, but it's probably going to be a year. And so, you know, there's no silver lining, but I do think that we're going to learn some really valuable lessons about how to move forward. And I can only hope that we begin to make use of those lessons.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what I was asking, is it seems like there is this notion of a privilege discourse and class mobility around the privileging of physical effort within an exercise regime over what it means to have a sustained life of effort. The last thing I want to ask you, Roxane, is, and I've been asking everybody this, has been, is there a particular change of perspective that has happened for you as a result of the coronavirus?
You know, I've always known, you know, that class stratification is real, but I think my awareness of it is even more pronounced. But also, I'm now aware that all of these multi-billion-dollar corporations and their leaders who are always telling us plebes how to live, like, we should stop listening to them, because they can't pay their bills after a week of lost revenue. You know, we see so many corporations at the beginning of April were like, we can't pay our rent. And like, how does Cheesecake Factory not have enough in the savings account to pay their rent? That's mind-blowing. That's completely mind-blowing to me. And so I just now realize how fragile our economy really is, and how much like wealthy people really are just leveraging debt. That's like all they're doing constantly. Like, so many people are living on razor thin margins because of these corporations and their greed, and to find out that they're living on razor thin margins too and hoarding money instead of paying their bills, while lecturing the rest of us about how we should have 8 months of fucking savings. Like, in what world? So, yeah, I mean, my eyes have been even more opened. And
right. I mean, I guess
for all. Medicare for all, universal basic income. Like, everyone should believe this now, and we have to make it happen. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I guess I'll share with you one of the things that has been, so the first conversation that I had as a part of this series was a conversation that I had with one of my executive chefs. Was in New York City, as folks within the restaurant industry, we have had to sit next to the uncomfortable the uncomfortable reality of what we have accepted is the way to run a restaurant, right? Which is people actually not getting paid a living wage. They're getting paid minimum wage, but minimum wage means shit in New York City, or did, like what does that mean? That means that that person has 3 jobs. And so thinking about what the future of, and I'm talking like Michelin star, super fancy people end up like fucking spending $1,500, easily $2,500 at the end of their lovely evening. How do we get to rethink an industry that is based on creating this warmth and this hospitality, this like literal extension of like a spirit of chaleur, and justify moving forward ever creating a system where something like this happens again, where it took a day and the whole industry collapsed, and all of those people became unemployed and unable to live. And I think that requires, one of the things that I really love, appreciate, and respect about the way that you think is like being able to hold like the complexity of the ugliness and also the beauty of things, and in excavating in that, finding possibly at best some questions that might help us answer and or solve what's going to happen, what the future might hold, right? Because I agree that what has happened has, if we weren't already aware, has definitely shown the profound ugliness of it.
And I think most of us, most of us who have our hearts in the right place, we were aware, but now you see that awareness amplified because we're seeing real life examples. It's no longer this theoretical thing from which we can distance ourselves. So, like, entire industries have collapsed. Like, I make most of my living speaking on college campuses. And so the minute the campuses started to close, all of a sudden I lost my income, at least until the fall, but that's optimistic. It's probably for the entire year. And then when the system starts back up, things that are not priorities are going to be the first to be cut. And that's probably writers who come to campus to, radicalize the students. And so you see that in everything, restaurants, you see it, movie theaters, everything is falling apart, which means that it was standing on the most fragile foundation.
Yeah. I mean, it was standing on, in some cases, a few people getting very wealthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah. So it's just, I'm curious to see what happens next, and like how these industries recover, and not just how like materially they do it, but how they work exactly as you said to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, programmatically, kind of like what is the actual
safety are we going to start to create? Like, I love going to a nice restaurant as much as anyone.
Sure.
But like, how do we make sure that the people, I think it's exactly what you said, the people that are making that meal and that experience possible, how do you can come in. I am having new internet installed.
Okay.
how can you, I lost my train of thought. How can you make sure that they're taken care of when you leave that restaurant?
Right.
And when you leave that experience?
Yes.
And how could owners, there's just a lot of questions I think that people are going to have to start to answer in every single industry.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to let you get your internet. Roxane. Yeah. Hey, thanks a lot for
Oh, you're more than welcome.
And I feel like we could have kept going, and so it'll be for another time. I'm curious about what that means for work for you.
The reality is I'm nervous, but I'm going to be okay. I'm going to go back to doing what I do on campuses. And I also have, come on in. I have several book contracts. So even though I'm nervous, don't cry for me. I'm going to be fine.
No, I mean, no one's crying for you, but All right, cool.
All right.
I'll see you later.
All right. Thank you, Casey.
See ya.
Bye.